The first scream does not come from a villager. It comes from the sky. A grinding, stone-on-stone shriek rolls over the plains as every house in the village lifts, shuddering from its foundations. Torches tumble, crops rip free of soil. Dozens of purple eyes blaze in the darkness above, and the village rises slowly, impossibly into the night, leaving clawed furrows in the earth where its streets used to be. If this kind of twisted Minecraft timeline pulls you in, tap like so more people find it, and subscribe so you do not miss the next one. Tell in the comments which biome you would defend if the Endermen started moving whole settlements. Now watch what happens to a world that wakes up too late. The world had always thought it understood Endermen. They wandered, they watched, they stole a block here, a block there. Annoying, eerie, dangerous in groups, but predictable. Players built their bases with slabs and water moats, villagers huddled in fenced towns, and the dark silhouettes on the horizon were just another risk of night. Until the night the plains village of Harrowfield vanished. The sun had set behind a band of acacia trees, leaving the sky bruised purple. Golems patrolled the gravel paths. Villagers traded under the last flicker of daylight. On a nearby hill, a player named Aaron dug the final row of a carrot field, listening to the soft thunk of earth and the distant lowing of cows. He noticed the silence first. Crickets stopped. Bats under the hill fell quiet. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Aaron straightened, his iron hoe hanging at his side, and looked toward Harrowfield. The torches went out in a single shivering wave. Where warm orange dots had glowed along the village streets, only darkness remained, cut by thin vertical slits of purple light. Aaron squinted. The lights were not torches. They were eyes. Endermen, dozens of them, ringed the village, their tall forms perfectly still. More stood among the houses, their heads tilted at impossible angles, studying doors, windows, rooftops. Aaron felt the hair on his arms rise. He had fought Endermen in caves, in the end, on lonely desert nights. They teleported. They picked up dirt. They screamed if you looked at them wrong. They did not gather. He took one step forward. The ground under Harrowfield groaned. From his hilltop, Aaron watched the entire village shiver like a trapped animal. Dust puffed from beneath foundations. The well rippled. A librarian stumbled out of his home, eyes wide, clutching an open book. Then the houses rose, not a block at a time, not as rubble, but as whole, intact structures lifted by invisible hands. Endermen clustered beneath them, arms stretched high, each gripping a single block that connected house to earth. A cornerstone, a fence post, a stair. With those points anchored, the rest of the build came along like a dragged schematic. Villagers screamed. One clung to a fence as his farm tore free, wheat cascading like golden rain. A child pounded on a door as the floor tilted. Aaron ran. His feet pounded the grass, heart hammering, but the gap between him and the village widened, not because he slowed, but because Harrowfield was leaving him. The whole town, held aloft by a lattice of Endermen, rose into the air, shadows sliding across the moon. "Stop!" Aaron shouted, voice cracking, though he knew they did not understand. "Put them down!" One Enderman turned its head toward him, eyes burning like coals in a windless night. It did not scream. It did not teleport. It simply watched as Harrowfield drifted away, carried by a slow, deliberate migration of tall, dark figures that walked on air. By morning, there was only a raw, rectangular wound in the plains and a single block of cobblestone left behind, humming faintly with purple particles. News did not travel by map or letter. It traveled by panic. By the time the second village vanished, this one, a tiger settlement called Frostmere, players had already posted crude signs at spawn points and nether hubs. Do not stare at Endermen. Avoid villages at night. Something is wrong. In Frostmere, it began with a bell. The bell rang once, then again, then in a frantic, constant clamour as the ground shook. Snow slid from spruce roofs. Wolves howled and broke their leashes. A wandering trader dove into a house as the doorframe lifted around him. The Endermen did not come from the forest. They came from the sky. They fell like shadows, not teleporting but descending, dozens upon dozens, landing with soft, muffled thuds, already holding blocks of packed ice and stripped logs that did not belong to Frostmere. They swapped them with the village's own foundation blocks, as if replacing pieces in a structure only they could see. Within minutes, Frostmere floated above the frozen river, drifting toward the horizon, the bells still ringing until it tumbled into the snow far below. On a distant mesa plateau, a player named Lisa watched the message scroll across her chat. Harrowfield has been moved. Frostmere has been moved. She frowned. Custom server event, she thought at first. Some admin playing God. Then she looked up from her redstone contraption and saw an Enderman on the far edge of the plateau, staring not at her, but at the clustered terracotta houses of Mesa Reach. It held a single red sand block. There had been theories about Endermen for as long as players had feared the dark. They were the builders of the end. They were corrupted humans. They were echoes of some earlier version of the world. No theory had prepared anyone for this. In the days that followed, Enderman behavior shifted everywhere at once. They no longer wandered aimlessly across plains, picking at dirt and grass. They moved in lines, in columns, in spirals around villages and pillager outposts, strongholds and ruined portals, as if surveying, measuring, calculating. At first, they only watched. Villagers, already wary of the tall, silent figures, grew frantic. Golems patrolled with iron fists raised, but the Endermen ignored them. They stood at the edges of wheat fields, at the corners of churches, on the roofs of blacksmiths, eyes glowing, heads twitching. Players took screenshots. They joked uneasily. They built more walls. Then Endermen began to place blocks. Not random dirt or sand, but carefully chosen materials that matched the existing builds. A cobblestone stair here, replacing a cracked brick. A spruce plank there, filling a gap. They repaired leaning houses. They straightened fences. They removed gravel paths and replaced them with perfectly aligned stone bricks. In the savannah village of Ember Steppe, a farmer woke to find his entire field replanted in neat, flawless rows. Not of wheat, but of chorus flowers. One night later, Ember Steppe was gone. Arin followed the trail. The block of cobblestone left in the crater where Harrowfield had been was not ordinary. When he touched it, his vision blurred with purple static. For an instant, he saw a flicker of another world, an endless void, islands of obsidian, and in the far distance, a cluster of villages floating in a ring around a central pillar of bedrock. Then the vision snapped away, leaving him gasping and half a heart down. He told the others at the spawn campfire. They listened, faces lit by orange light and the occasional flare of a burning log. Lysa sat opposite him, redstone dust still smeared on her fingers. Beside her, Joren, a builder known for sprawling desert cities, leaned forward, eyes narrowed. "You are saying they are not destroying the villages," Joren said slowly. They are relocating them. Aaron nodded. I saw houses, farms, bells hanging in the end. Why? Lisa asked. Why would they want villagers? No one answered. Far away, under the ocean, in a drowned stronghold that had seen no footsteps for years, Endermen appeared in the flooded library. They did not suffocate. Water parted around them as if repelled, leaving dry pockets where their feet touched stone. They moved between shelves, fingers brushing books that had swelled with seawater. One reached for a cobweb, held it, then let it dissolve into nothing. In the portal room, they gathered around the empty frame. The silverfish that had once guarded it were gone, their spawners replaced by obsidian pillars that rose to the ceiling. The Endermen placed blocks of mossy stone into the missing portal frames, not to light the portal, but to complete the circle. Then, with a sound like a chorus of distant bells, they turned in unison and looked straight up, through layers of stone, dirt, and ocean. On the surface, the sea bulged. Fishermen in a nearby coastal village dropped their rods as the water heaved, forming a dome that rose higher and higher, glistening in the moonlight. Endermen walked up the inside of the water shell, feet never quite touching liquid, carrying blocks of prismarine, dark oak, and sandstone. They were building something. Lisa saw the pattern before most others. On a map wall that covered the entire side of her mesa base, little pins marked every reported moved village. Plains, taiga, savanna, desert, jungle. Some had been taken from the edge of mountains, others from deep forests. She connected them with red string. The lines formed a spiral. At the center of that spiral, the map was still blank, an uncharted region of deep ocean and scattered islands. Their path is not random, she said to Arin over voice chat, her cursor circling the center. They are bringing villages towards something in the middle of the world. An ocean monument? Arin asked. Too many, she replied. Too big. And they are moving them into the sky, not onto the water. Joran, listening in, spoke quietly. What if they are building a new end above the overworld? Outside their bases, the nights grew stranger. Endermen no longer attacked when looked at. They stared back, unblinking, as if human eyes were beneath their notice. They teleported not in short hops, but in long, arcing trajectories, vanishing from one horizon and appearing at another, always moving toward a single direction. Villages began to disappear even from villages that had not yet been moved. Doors were found open in the morning, beds empty, workstations unused. Yet there were no zombies, no pillagers, no broken blocks. On the third night of the new moon, the Endermen took their first city. Joran's desert metropolis, Sunforge, had been a marvel of sandstone and glass. Towers that caught the morning light, aqueducts that carried water from distant rivers, markets shaded by colorful wool awnings. He had built it over months, block by block, trading with villagers, defending from husks and wandering patrols. He stood on his central pyramid when the sky turned purple. Not the soft gradient of sunset, but a sudden, violent wash of color that bled from the horizon inward. Stars winked out. The moon dimmed. In the silence that followed, every Enderman within 1,000 blocks looked up. They came in a wave, hundreds, maybe thousands, teleporting to the air above Sunforge, then walking down invisible steps until they were level with the rooftops. They carried blocks from other biomes, oak logs from distant forests, basalt from nether wastes, ice from far tundras. Each placed their block at a precise point on a building, as if following a plan etched into reality itself. Joren shouted at them, voice hoarse. "This is my city!" His words vanished into the hum that filled the air, a low, vibrating tone that made glass panes rattle. Golems charged, swinging iron fists, but their blows passed through the Endermen as if through smoke. Arrows slowed and fell short, as if the air had thickened. Then, with a lurch that knocked Joren to his knees, Sunforge detached from the desert. Sand cascaded from its foundations in golden waterfalls. Wells ran dry in an instant. Cacti toppled as the entire city rose, leaving behind a perfect negative imprint in the dunes. From a nearby hill, a wandering trader watched, leads tangled around his llamas' necks as Sunforge ascended into the purple sky, carried by a halo of Endermen. "Where are you taking them?" he whispered, though no one answered. The world split between those who fled and those who hunted. Some players abandoned villages entirely, retreating to remote mountain peaks, ocean rafts, or deep underground bunkers lit by soul lanterns. They watched from spyglass and map as the Enderman's spiral tightened, more and more settlements vanishing into the sky. Others, like Arin, Lisa, and Joren, refused to run. They gathered in a ruined bastion remnant in the nether, its blackstone corridors lit by lava falls and flickering torches. Piglins snorted in distant chambers. The air smelled of ash and old gold. On a table made of warped planks, Liza spread out her latest map. "They are converging here," she said, tapping the blank center. "We have to see what is at the heart of this spiral." Joren's jaw tightened. His eyes were red, not from lack of sleep, but from watching Sunforge vanish. "If they are building something, we destroy it." Arin nodded, but his hand trembled slightly. "And the villages they have already taken: Harrowfield, Frostmere, Emberstep, Sunforge. If they are all up there, what happens if we break whatever is holding them?" No one answered. In the overworld, the spiral reached its center. Above a patch of open ocean, far from any land, a structure hung in the sky. It was not an end island, but it was made of obsidian and endstone, shot through with veins of quartz and deep slate. Dozens of villages orbited it at varying heights, each held in place by lattices of obsidian beams that connected to their wells, bells, and town centers. Harrowfield rotated slowly beside Frostmere, their paths intersecting like planets in a silent system. Emberstep drifted above them, its chorus flower fields glowing faintly. Sunforge, larger than the rest, occupied a central ring, its sandstone towers casting long shadows over the ocean far below. Endermen swarmed over the structure, placing and removing blocks with relentless precision. They built bridges between villages, stairs of purple and basalt, arches of warped wood and stone. They reinforced wells with obsidian frames, replaced bells with strange dark chimes that emitted a low, resonant tone. At the very core of the construct, above the empty air, they were assembling something that had never existed before. A portal frame, larger than any strongholds, hung in mid-air, made from a fusion of bedrock, crying obsidian, and endstone. The slots that would normally hold Eyes of Ender were filled instead with blocks taken from village centers. Bells, lecterns, composter barrels, fletching tables, grindstones, all humming with faint captured energy. When completed, it would not lead to the end. It would bring the end here. Arin, Lisa, and Joren reached the site on a stormy night. Their boat rocked on the heaving ocean as rain hammered the surface, turning it into a churning field of whitecaps. Lightning forked overhead, briefly illuminating the colossal structure suspended above them. Lysa stared up, water streaming down her face. "They are making a sky stronghold," she breathed, "and they are powering it with villagers." Joran gripped the side of the boat so hard his knuckles went white. "Then we cut its power." Aaron said nothing. His eyes tracked the orbit of Harrowfield, following the familiar outline of its church, its well, the hill where he had once watched the sunset. Tiny figures moved along its streets, not Endermen, but villagers, going about their routines in the sky as if nothing had changed. "They are alive," he said, voice barely audible over the storm. "They are still trading, farming, sleeping. They are prisoners," Joran snapped. "Or protected," Aaron replied. Above them, Endermen stopped. Hundreds of heads turned in perfect unison, eyes locking onto the small boat below. The rain seemed to slow around their gaze, each droplet stretching into a line of silver before hitting the sea. Lysa swallowed. "They see us." The Enderman did not attack. Instead, a single block of obsidian detached from the outer ring and fell, slicing through the rain. It hit the ocean with a hiss, but did not sink. It floated, buoyed by a faint purple glow, drifting toward the boat until it nudged against the side. A stare. "Are they inviting us?" Aaron asked. Joran drew his sword. "Or baiting us?" Lysa looked from the obsidian to the structure above, to the spiral of villages and the half-finished portal at the core. Her mind raced through redstone logic, through mob behavior patterns, through every oddity she had ever seen in Endermen. "They could have taken us already," she said quietly. "They have taken whole cities. If they wanted us dead, we would not be here." Aaron stepped onto the obsidian. The block held his weight, solid and cold. Another appeared above it, then another, forming a staircase that rose from the ocean into the sky. Endermen lined the path at intervals, watching silently. Joran hesitated, then followed, sword still drawn. Lysa came last, hand resting on the hilt of her own blade, heart pounding. As they climbed, the storm fell away below them, leaving only a thin mist. The ocean became a dark, rippling sheet. Wind tugged at their clothes. The air grew colder, thinner, tinged with a dry, metallic taste. They stepped onto Sunforge first. Joran nearly collapsed. His city was intact. Every tower, every market stall, every fountain. Villagers moved along the streets, trading, gossiping, sleeping in their beds. Yet there were differences. Endermen stood at every major intersection, at every well, at the doors of every house. They watched, but did not interfere. Children chased each other around an Enderman's legs. The tall figure simply stepped aside, eyes flicking down briefly, then back to the horizon. Joran approached a farmer he recognized, a man with a straw hat and a fondness for carrots. "Do you know where you are?" Joran asked. The farmer looked up, green eyes calm. "Sunforge," he said. "The city in the sky." "Do you want to leave?" Joran pressed. The farmer glanced at an Enderman standing nearby, then back at Joran. "Leave?" He seemed puzzled. "The monsters do not come here. The nights are always watched. The crops never fail. Why would we leave?" Aaron shivered. They crossed a bridge of purpur to Harrowfield. Aaron's chest tightened as he walked past the familiar well, the blacksmith's forge, the house where he had once traded for his first set of enchanted tools. Everything was as it had been. except for the obsidian struts anchoring the village to the larger structure and the Endermen standing sentinel on every rooftop. He found the cobblestone block that had once hummed in the crater. Here, at the sky's heart, it pulsed softly, in time with his heartbeat. Lisa studied the central portal. Up close, it was even more unsettling. The frames seemed to warp the air around it, bending light and sound. The blocks taken from villages glowed faintly, each one connected by thin threads of purple energy to the settlements orbiting the structure. "This is why they moved them," she said slowly. "Villages generate order, routine. Bells ringing, beds used, work done. The Endermen are harnessing that pattern, that stability, to anchor this portal." "For what?" Joran demanded. "To invade? To turn the overworld into another end? Or to escape?" Aaron said. They all turned to him. He gestured at the villages. "Look at them. The Endermen are not hurting the villagers. They are protecting them. No raids, no zombies, no griefing. They have built a sanctuary in the sky." "A sanctuary they control," Joran replied. "A farm, a battery." Lisa's eyes narrowed. "What are you running from?" she whispered, though she was not speaking to her friends. An Enderman stepped forward. It was taller than the rest, its eyes a deeper shade of purple. It held no block. It did not flinch as Lisa approached, her hand hovering near her sword. "You are coordinating all of this," she said softly. "You are not random. You have a plan." The Enderman tilted its head. Images flooded Lisa's mind, not in words, but in impressions. An endless, empty end, its obsidian pillars cracked and crumbling. The dragon gone, its egg cold. Islands falling apart at the edges. A slow, creeping void eating away at the dimension's borders. Loneliness. Then a flash of the overworld. Forests teeming with life. Villages bustling. Oceans full of movement. Noise, chaos. Unpredictable, but rich. The Endermen had watched for years. They had seen villages rise and fall. Players build and abandon. Mobs swarm and die. They had learned. The image shifted to the sky stronghold, to the portal at its heart. A bridge, not for invasion, but for migration. For an entire species fleeing a dying home. Lisa staggered back, breath ragged. "They are refugees," she said. "They are not conquering us. They are joining us. But they do not trust the ground. They have seen it change too many times. So they are building their own world above it." Joran's grip tightened on his sword. "And in the process, they are taking ours." Aaron looked at Harrowfield, at the villagers moving peacefully under the Enderman's watchful eyes. He thought of zombies clawing at doors, of pillager horns in the night, of bases blown apart by creepers and players alike. "Maybe they are saving it," he said quietly. "Saving pieces of it. At least." A deep hum rose from the portal. Blocks along its frame brightened. The threads of energy connecting it to the villages thickened, pulsing. Endermen across the structure turned toward it, eyes glowing in unison. "It is activating," Lisa said. "We have to decide now. Destroy it, and the sky stronghold would crumble. The villages might fall, or they might snap back to their original locations, foundations slamming into old craters. The Endermen would lose their bridge, trapped in a dying dimension. Let it complete, and the worlds would merge. Endermen would walk the overworld not as scattered, eerie wanderers, but as neighbors, guardians, builders of a second layer of civilization in the sky. Villages would become nodes in a vast, humming network of stability and pattern. Aaron looked at Joran. Joran's city had been stolen, but here it stood, untouched, thriving in a way it never had on the desert floor. His anger warred with something else, pride perhaps, or the stubborn satisfaction of seeing his work preserved. Lysa weighed the equations in her mind. Power flows, mob caps, the delicate balance of a world that had always teetered on the edge of chaos and order. "If we let this happen," she said slowly, "the overworld will change forever. No more isolated villages, no more easy raids, no more simple sky bases. The Endermen will be everywhere, watching, moving, adjusting." "And if we stop it?" Aaron asked. She looked at the portal, at the flickering images of a crumbling end that still burned at the edges of her thoughts. "Then an entire species dies in the dark," she said. The hum rose to a roar. Blocks along the portal frame locked into place with loud, echoing clicks. The air crackled. Villagers paused in their routines, looking up, sensing something vast and unseen shifting above them. Joran stepped toward the portal, sword raised. Aaron moved with him, but instead of swinging, he placed his hand on Joran's arm. "Your city lives," Aaron said. "Your people live. Maybe this is the only way they get to keep doing that." Joran's jaw clenched. Muscles worked in his neck. The sword trembled in his grip. Lysa stepped between them and the portal. "We cannot know all the consequences," she said, "but we know this. The world we knew is already gone. The Endermen have already changed it. The only choice left is what kind of world comes next." Joran closed his eyes. He lowered his sword. The portal ignited, not in a burst of green like a stronghold gate, but in a slow, unfolding bloom of deep, velvety purple that spread from block to block. The frame filled with a swirling vortex that did not look like the end or the nether, but like a fusion of both, stars and obsidian, forests and void, villages and floating islands. Endermen stepped forward one by one and vanished into the light. Some did not leave. They remained at their posts in the villages, eyes softer now, movements less rigid. They had found a new purpose. Below, in the overworld, players looked up to see a second sky. Villages floated above them, connected by bridges of obsidian and purpur, lit by lanterns that never went out. Endermen walked those bridges, carrying blocks, adjusting structures, tending to farms that never saw creepers or raids. On the ground, life went on. Zombies still clawed at doors in the few villages that remained below. Pillagers still blew their horns. Players still dug deep for diamonds, still rushed the nether, still fought the dragon in a now strangely quiet end. But every night, when the stars came out, they were joined by another constellation, the lights of the sky stronghold, drifting slowly across the heavens like a new, artificial moon. In time, some players built their own bridges upward. They learned to trade not just with villagers, but with Endermen, offering blocks of rare materials in exchange for safe passage, for protection, for help moving builds to the sky. A few brave souls stepped through the great portal at the stronghold's heart, vanishing into the new, shared dimension beyond. Aaron settled in Harrowfield's sky twin, dividing his days between the ground and the heights, a bridge between old and new. Lysa spent her life studying the portal's energies, mapping the new rules of a world where patterns had power and stability could be harvested. Joran rebuilt Sunforge twice, once on the ground, in the shadow of its own floating reflection, and once in the sky, accepting that his city now existed in two places, in two stories. Villagers adapted faster than anyone. They rang their new chimes, tended their elevated fields, slept under ceilings watched by purple eyes. For them, safety mattered more than philosophy. The monsters could not reach them. That was enough. Years later, in a quiet plains biome far from the spiral's center, a child stood on a hill at dusk. She looked up at the sky, at the drifting silhouette of a village she had never visited, its lanterns flickering like distant fireflies. An Enderman stood beside her, holding a single dirt block, its eyes reflecting the same lights. "Do you remember," she asked without looking away, "what it was like before the villagers moved?" The Enderman did not answer. It simply placed the dirt block at her feet, then stepped back, watching as she climbed onto it to see a little farther into the sky that now belonged to both of them.